everybody. So welcome to the first episode of the Haunted Hangover Podcast. I'm Louie, and I'm here with my buddy Dave.
Hey.
And this first episode is going to be pretty laid back. We're going to get into some Halloween memories. We're each going to have one specific moment that reminds us of Halloween as a whole. And I also want to kind of get into why I started this podcast and a little bit of why I started Haunted Hangover, the channel on YouTube. What was kind of my inspiration for it. So, Dave, before we go into all that, what's our friendship? How did that start?
Our friendship started, technically it started in 2005. 2006 maybe. I had gone to a school in Soho called Makeup Designery, and I befriended both of our very good friend, Emily. And that's kind of how we became friends, was through Emily. And we were always in the same room a bunch of times, but we never talked probably till 2011, 2012. I think it might have been at Monster Mania or something like that. And then been buds ever since.
Yeah, we both go to horror conventions, specifically Monster Mania. We've been both going for years. So, we hang out there and, run around and act like a bunch of crazy people sometimes. Not Dave so much.
It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Mostly me and some of our other friends.
That's okay.
But so the podcast itself, again, it's connected to the Haunted Hangover channel. I just kind of wanted an outlet just for us, because I wanted Dave and I to kind of, we're close to age, and us to kind of just talk about Halloween as a whole. And just kind of, we'll have different topics for in every episode, but just a place to kind of talk about our love for Halloween, all throughout the year, not just in September, October, when I think most people celebrate it, right?
Yeah. Well, we could always talk about it. It's never not in season for us.
Exactly. So, and Haunted Hangover, how that was started basically was my sister Sam and I, my younger sister, we both kind of love Halloween as well, and we both love haunted attractions, and that was the original idea for Haunted Hangover. We were going to review different types of haunted attractions, whether it's, it could be a haunted corn maze, a haunted house, or even weird, it doesn't have to be haunted, but just weird attractions, and we're still doing that, but we also are now reviewing, kind of just horror, Halloween-inspired games, and anything that could kind of fall into that. Dave, you've been in a few videos now, right? 2 or 3, I think?
I've been in a couple. Let's see, 3, I think. One that's going to be released soon with a card game. Yeah,
that'll probably be out by the time this is released. But yeah, that was just kind of what we wanted to do with Haunted Hangover. And, we have, I always wanted it to be just kind of like my friends and I and my sister kind of just hanging out, and our experiences, going through haunted attractions or playing, horror games. Or we also have Cocktail Culture. My sister's she's actually a bartender, so she creates these cocktails, and we kind of, we put together these fun videos, kind of just her making them. But with this specific podcast, I just wanted it to be kind of an offshoot of that and kind of just associated with it, But for us to start our conversation today in this first episode, I just kind of want us to each talk, and I'll let Dave start. I just wanted us to kind of talk about our love for Halloween and when it started. So Dave, I'll let you start. Why is Halloween so important to you? And when did your fascination, or, not obsession, but just your love for Halloween, start?
It all stems back to elementary school. So my elementary school, Hampton Street, love that school. Anytime I go on a bike ride or anything like that, I always make it a point to circle the area, just to kind of bask in the in those memories. And I'll always try to ride my bike through the back, just to just being around something that you had really fond memories of. I don't know, it might sound lame, but it's just something I always like to do. But it all stems back to elementary school. And I don't know how it's like now. It's still very well may be this way, but when it was Halloween time, literally, the entire day was dedicated to Halloween, and you didn't learn anything. Every single class that you had was a Halloween party. So literally, like, from I don't know what time you start class, but from like 8 to 2 was just a nonstop Halloween party. And that's just really where my love for the holiday and just kind of, like, I don't want to call it a mindset, but like just like that memory that's so deeply embedded in me is just, that's where it all stems from. So for me personally, it's elementary school.
Yeah, for me, it's probably the same thing. It's a lot of it rides on nostalgia.
Yeah,
I think for both of us, we're both in our 30s, so I think a lot of the times we look back at when we were like 8, 9, 10. I even look back at even high school. I did a lot of things, even though you're a little older. But nostalgia plays a big part into why, I think we both love Halloween. And like you said, talking about elementary school, I remember like bringing in, like they'd have like little Halloween parties and we'd bring in like junk food, and whether it be like Hostess cakes, and people would make like pies and things like that. And a big memory for me, and I don't know if they did this for you when you were a kid, but we'd have a Halloween parade. And I think I did this like 6 times, and they would have all the kids dress up and literally just line up and go. I think we'd walk around the school, basically, like around the block, all dressed up.
That's amazing.
I know. And it's funny because in my head as a kid, I always thought all schools did that. But if I asked like other friends, and they're like, no, I don't think we ever had a Halloween parade. But again, that's something like we did. What activities did they do in your school?
It's like, it's funny because there's certain areas, like, because, we're from the tri-state area, tri-state region. So it's not this, not everything's the same, but it's all kind of universally, like it's kind of the same shit universally, like, especially, being from New Jersey, New York, etc. It's funny. So we didn't do, you know what? There might have been something like a parade, but I do have something definite that they used to do in my elementary school. And it was, they would take like the lower, I would say like I don't remember what grade it was, maybe the 3rd or 4th grade kids. And they would set up a classroom, and they set up bleachers, like those little tiny bleachers that were meant for like little kids. And they would set it up in like a circle, and they'd have the younger kids sit on the bleachers. And then the older kids put on like a weird Halloween show.
That sounds amazing.
And like what they did was they had like a fog machine, and they had all the older kids dressed up, and like they were underneath the bleacher, and they would like grab your foot, or they were just like, honestly, I used to be afraid. I was really scared as a little kid about stuff like this.
So was I.
So like when I would watch like horror movies and stuff, like hell, like I gotta say, ever since I was a kid, the scariest monster, slasher, whatever you want to call him, for me, that literally gave me trouble sleeping was Hellraiser. So I used to go to sleep with a butter knife under my pillow, thinking that's gonna do anything to anyone. But
it's not even a lethal weapon, a butter knife.
I'm not even lying. And like, I had wrestling buddies, and I would stack the wrestling buddies between the crease of the bed and the wall, so nothing could grab me from the.
That's amazing, dude. But, the combination of the wrestling buddies and the butter knife are hilarious.
Introducing WWF Wrestling Buddies. Wrestling Buddies from Tonka. Bunk 'em, bop 'em. Wrestling Buddies are looking for action.
But yeah, horror films, I also think kind of fall in line with Halloween, and I think we both kind of love horror films and old horror films. So I think that also could kind of fall into like our love for the holiday. It's just as important, right? Like, you would think the same thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And there was something I wanted to ask you too, if your elementary school did this too, was so we also had a party, but the party, I think if Halloween landed on like a Friday, they did a night party that was in the gymnasium, and it was either a Friday night or a Saturday night. And I'm telling you, this party was incredible. So they used to have a haunted house set up on the stage in the gymnasium.
Yeah.
And you had to crawl through a box to get into the haunted house. So you crawl through this box, and then it was just like little partitions that was probably like, Like maybe like a couple 100 feet long that you just kept walking up and down. It was just like spider webs and like little kids running at you. I was terrified to go into it. And then they had just like little games set up, and they had, this was also the really cool thing, was being in the school after hours, and all the classrooms were themed. So like classrooms had a game room, classrooms had a snack room, classrooms had a movie room. And this whole thing actually, and now this goes back to like, oh, did other schools do this? Now it's not exactly Halloween related, but they used to do sleepovers at my school.
What?
And we used to have giant sleepovers in the gymnasium.
Wow,
and again,
dude, yeah.
they did this.
I never heard of that.
Exactly. They did the same shit where, again, all the teachers, like they selected teachers to stay for the sleepover, and again, you'd have a game room, you'd have like a TV room, you could go watch a movie, and then you went to bed at like 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. It was amazing, and like again, this is where all of my love for like Halloween and in that school in general stemmed from, because we did such cool things. I don't think people do that, like especially now.
Yeah, like I'll be honest, even me, I went to elementary school in the Bronx, so they didn't do anything like that. Again, I think the most was like they'd have like a party, and I'm thinking like between like kindergarten and like 5th grade, they'd have like little parties during the day, and then they'd have the parade like I mentioned. But the big Halloween parties, I didn't really attend those until I was probably in high school. So I think like 14, that was like my first. Like the school would like have this big Halloween party where everyone would dress up and show up at like 7 or 8 at night, and there'd be kids like sneaking in alcohol and all that usual stuff. But that was like, I didn't start going to bigger Halloween parties like on my own until I was 14. Like when it came to school and stuff like that, I was about 14 years old. But the fact that your school allowed you to sleep in it is amazing. I've never heard of that.
Dude, it was unreal. It was unreal.
That's crazy.
Like, I have very like the memories are there. Like I can picture it, but like I just remember, and especially being, I don't know how old you are in 5th grade, but like being a 5th grader, that gymnasium is huge to you. It's, when you walk in there now, because I go there to vote. So when I go there to vote, it's you laugh. It's like, man, when you're a kid, it used to feel so otherworldly. Like it was just this giant space. And now you walk in there when you're older, and it's just like, wow, this place is freaking, it's tiny.
I don't even think like kids nowadays would,
they don't
parents
do that.
would never let them. Honestly, like being from New York, I don't even see like kids dress up that often. Like it depends on the neighborhood.
Oh, man, it's a different time, man.
In Long Island, I'll see it a little bit. Here, I live in Queens now, but like I'll see it in certain neighborhoods. But you don't see it. I feel like when I was a kid, I saw it way more. I remember the streets being lined up. Even as far back as maybe 16, 17 years ago, I would have been in high school. I remember like even like seeing kids in the street. And I still dress up now. Like we always hang out in October. But we always go to parties, and we do we all hang out, us and our friends. But like I remember when I was younger, people dressed up. Even like you'd see like the adults taking out their kids trick or treating dressed up as whatever, Jason or a vampire or Michael Myers or whatever. And I feel like now you don't see it as much. I don't know if maybe the world's a different place. Obviously, even something as crazy like you being allowed to sleep at your school, I don't think that ever fly in like 2020. You know what I mean?
No, it was just it's just to rewind back for a second. So I was born in 1983, so I'm 37 years old. It's just a different time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like things are a lot more relaxed. Things are a lot more, things were definitely more, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, yeah, we'll just let that go. Like, you know what I mean? Like nobody cared as much as they do now. Like things aren't as uptight. And, like I said, like I've asked people before, I'm like, have you guys ever done that? Nobody has. It's like, I think that might be very exclusive to Hampton Street School, which is in Mineola. So, but it goes back to, I just think my school itself was just something special. And that's kind of why I hold it dear.
Yeah, it sounds like,
So.
yeah, no one, again, you're the first person, this is the first time I'm hearing this. I've never even heard anyone ever say they spend the night in their school. But it's, you know, you know what's funny about nostalgia, and obviously you look through everything through nostalgic glasses or something like that, but I feel like Halloween felt more dangerous back then in like the late 80s and early 90s. And it's funny
100%.
Yeah, now people are more sheltered. The kids are more sheltered. Like they shelter their kids. But I feel like back then you had the like urban myths, urban legends, like the razor blade and the candy or in the apples and all poisonous candy. And I feel like kids were just like, all right, go out trick-or-treating, be home by 9 or 10 or whatever. And now it's like, it's completely different.
Make sure you take all your candy and other goodies home before you eat them. Don't sneak any snacks while you're going door to door. Let mom or dad look over your candy when you get home. Any candy or food that isn't wrapped should be thrown away. This year, let's trick-or-treat street smart.
But that, I guess, in time, the world changes and everything kind of just changes. You know what I mean?
Dude, like nowadays, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you don't see anybody out on the street.
Nah, yeah, it's completely different.
Like on Halloween, yeah, you don't see anything. But, you know, like when I was in high school, so, like, they didn't do anything Halloween-wise in high school. Like, there was no parties. There was nothing like that in the high school that I went to. But, like, you know, like, when we were, like, coming up, though, like, in, like, you know, between, you know, middle school and high school, the streets were flooded. And it was the bad kids that were out, that were you know, doing toilet paper and eggs, which we called bombing. And then you had people trick-or-treating, and then we did both. So, like, we'd go trick-or-treating first, and then we'd do the bombing. So, like, we'd get our, you know, my mom would take the friggin' sewing needle and put it on the can of shaving cream, and then she would melt it. So the hole was a little smaller. It had so when you sprayed the shaving cream, it had a longer reach. Like, I don't even think that's a thing. I mean, listen, I'm sure there's kids out there that are going out vandalizing on Halloween. I'm sure that's never going to die. But, like, that was a very prominent thing, especially where I live.
The best part of that story is that your mom encouraged you to do it.
I mean, you know, it is what it is. Like, she always had me dressed up in Halloween costumes ever since I was a little kid. I think she definitely has a love for it too, but she always knew that I loved it. So she always made sure that I had a good Halloween and always made sure that, you know, like I had a costume and, you know, I had candy and stuff like that. Like, she was just, you know, supporting that Halloween habit. You know what I mean?
The same goes for me. My mother and my grandmother were obvious. Like, when it comes to Halloween and my love for it, it all stems from them specifically. Like, my mother's birthday's in October. It's the day before, it's the 30th. So she always made a big deal.
Devil's Night.
Growing up, she always had parties that day, and my grandmother loved, you know, anything that was scary or spooky. And that goes into my memory. That my grandmother had a huge party in 1992, and you know, I remember as a kid dressing up as like a Ninja Turtle and things like that. But this party, for some reason, I always go back to it. So in 1992, Halloween was on a Saturday. So you know what that means. Just like, you know, nowadays when Halloween's on a Friday or Saturday, there's huge parties. Everyone's having parties. Bars are having parties. There's club events.
I'm pretty sure the Halloween this drops on Friday or Saturday this year, right?
Yeah, which is great. I'm sure everyone's going to be having a party, you know, that weekend or the weekend before. But
well, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. With the way things are right now. But
yeah.
we won't go into that. But my grandmother had this party in 1992. So, again, Halloween was on a Saturday. My sister was 1 year old. I remember. So she was a baby. And I remember my mother dressed me up as a vampire that year because she was dressed up as a vampire. So we kind of had like matching costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was dressed as a mermaid because around that time, what was really popular? The Little Mermaid. Like, that was like one of the biggest movies. Like, around, I think I forget if Little Mermaid was 90 or 91. It was around that time, or 89. It might have been 89, but around that time. So mermaids were still very popular. So I remember my mother, you know, taking me trick-or-treating, during the day. And I remember we walked around like the neighborhood really quick, because she wanted to get to my grandmother's place, obviously, to party and drink and dance and all that stuff. So we quickly went trick-or-treating. I remember it wasn't a long session. I think we went to a couple of doors, and she took me to like one or two of her friends to give me more candy to get by it quicker, and so that we could head to my grandmother's place. So I knew my grandmother was planning this because she used to babysit me. So I vividly remember her preparing her apartment, putting up cobwebs and putting up decorations all over the place. And I remember her buying, and I still own this little vampire that pops in and out of a coffin. It doesn't work anymore, but I remember she bought it specifically for this party because she got a kick out of it. It had like creepy music. I don't know if you know what music I'm talking about, but there's like this generic like creepy music, all like, I don't know if Halloween like figures or decorations have it now, but like it makes this weird creepy music.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you've probably heard it before. But so she was setting up the apartment. So the one decoration that stood out to me that I got a kick out of was, and I think I've shown you a picture of this, is she took an old suit from like one of my uncles or something like that and stuffed it like a dummy and put like this really shitty, like cheap Frankenstein mask on it and like gloves.
Those are the best.
Yeah, it was the best. One of these like Dollar Tree. I remember they had like a cloth in the back. And she put it on, and she stuffed the head with like a pillow or something like that. And my favorite part is she pinned the empty Budweiser can to the hand and sat him on the couch. Yep. I don't know why, but I got such a kick out of that. Do you know anyone that ever did that? Like built a dummy or like put it in front of their house?
Yeah, we used to do it in my house. We used to put like take like, like a pair of jeans and like a plaid like a plaid shirt. And we just stuff it, and it was just a dummy sitting on the steps, like on a chair on the front steps, and that was one of the Halloween decorations.
It's like a makeshift scarecrow, basically. But
yeah, basically.
We don't live on a farm, so you kind of just plop it in front of your house or like on your sofa.
Yeah, it's hilarious. That's why I say they're the best. It's hysterical.
And even to this day, another thing that stuck out to me while she was setting up this party was. And I still have one to this day, is a all black rubber rat with red eyes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, I always got a kick out of that. I remember being scared of it because this thing, it looked like it was black. It was all black with red eyes. It looked like a rat. From far, you'd think it was a rat. No rat really looked like that. But when you're 8, you know what I mean? You kind of, keep your distance from it. But eventually I kind of warmed up to the rubber rat and just kind of got a kick out of it. I also remember her playing.
Warmed up to the rubber rat.
Warmed up to the rubber rat. I also remember this was like one of the first years I ever heard of a spooky sounds tape. Because I remember her specifically buying it so she could play it while people were like, walking into her apartment in the beginning of the party before they started playing music and dancing and all that stuff. And that always intrigued me.
Your grandma had a plan.
Yeah, it was amazing, dude. In my head, it looks like the Roseanne episode. Like, you know what I mean? Like looking through it, like nostalgic wise, like I'm just like that's what it reminded me. Like she decorated her apartment really, really great for this party. So later on that night, my mother and I and my sister finally arrived to my my grandmother's house. There's people there. People are dressed up. And one thing that got me as soon as I walked in, again, I'm a kid, is, and this might just be, I'm not remembering every detail, but as soon as I got to this party, there must have been at least a minimum of about 50 people in her apartment. This guy, I don't know if it was a family friend, with a rubber mask. In my mind, if I remember correctly, it was like this furry cyclops like rubber mask. Him jumping out at me and scaring the shit out of me. It almost ruined the beginning of the night. I was a kid. I didn't.
That's good.
I'm literally crying, and it's funny because that picture I showed you, which I'm actually gonna plug it into the visual version of this podcast. You could see my makeup kind of like dripping down my face because I was scared
from
shitless.
Tears.
I didn't know, dude. I had no idea that he was gonna because most of the costumes were like innocent costumes, like a jester, and my grandma was dressed up as like a pumpkin. My mom was a vampire, but that's your mom, so you're not really scared of her. But this guy has this grotesque Cyclops. I don't even know what the hell he was supposed to be. It was the early 90s, so God knows. But I remember the only thing that would like really make me feel better was one of the family friends had like a rainbow afro. I guess they were dressed as like a clown. And they gave that to me to make me feel better because I got a kick out of that. So that my mom and like her friends and her cousins and my uncles and everyone could just continue drinking and partying. And it's funny because I have pictures of that too. Like me wearing this like rainbow afro, smiling and happy. Because that was the only thing that made me like, feel better,
With your tears and makeup.
It's amazing, dude. I was, again, like, I'm thinking, like, I went trick-or-treating earlier that day. I was having a good time. I got candy. I think, I forget, I had watched, there was some, I don't know if it was Goosebumps. It might have been something else, because I think this was before Goosebumps. But I watched some, like, kiddie Halloween. It might have been The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, or whatever. But I was having a great day. And then as soon as I get and I was excited for my grandma's party. Because, again, like I said, she was decorating for, like, days. But then this fucking guy scares the shit out of me.
Fucking Cyclops ruined it for you.
But it's funny because, like, from a kid's perspective, like, this party was everything to me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Like, everything about it, even when I think back, like, the food that was there, the costumes, the atmosphere, everything was perfect. And, again, it kind of all goes back to that party. You want to recreate that feeling that you had when you were a kid,
sure,
So sure. It's weird, man, because as you get older, things just seemed better when you were young. Doesn't necessarily mean they were. You know what I mean?
I have a companion piece to what you were just talking about. Back when I must have been 1 or 2. I definitely wasn't at this party, obviously. But my cousins in Staten Island had a infamous Halloween party that I want to have memories of. I want to know about it. So all I know is just from the pictures I've seen. And again, from what I hear from my cousins, they tell me that it was one hell of a Halloween party and that there's videotape of it. One of my cousins has it. I have yet to be, I haven't gone to Staten Island in a while. I would love to. Basically, like, and when you see these pictures, you're gonna be like, okay, everybody's gonna wish they were at this Halloween party because it's just ridiculous. But so I don't know who's wearing it, and it might be my uncle that has this mask on, and this was always in our house, and he used to have this mask, and it's actually a really fucking dope mask, and I don't know who made it. Who's the one who, I mean, I know there's a few famous, I know there's a few, is it Don Post?
Don Post, yeah. Don Post, I remember, was like the one that made the Michael Myers mask, like back in the day.
Yeah, it might be a Don Post mask. It's a really awesome, like, just like a hooded ghoul.
Yeah.
And like, his eye is missing, it's kind of like dripping down, and it had like gloves to go with it. And I remember it was always in a black bag in my closet, which is now not in my closet, in a room in my house, which is now a den, but it was a bedroom. It was always in there, and I remember I would look at it. I would like go in and look at it and just place it on the bed and just look at it, and I would be scared, but I would just look at it, and they'd be like, "Okay, it's enough. I gotta put it back." Like, I'm telling you, when you put these pictures up, and I'll send you all the pictures. I have a lot. And it's funny, too. The last album that I put out, Human Noise, if you have the cassette of it, the inside tape layout is my cousins dressed up as Kiss. So that picture, that was kind of my homage to that. Halloween itself and that party was putting that picture as the inlay, the inside image of the cassette tape that I released last year. So if that kind of goes with your story of you having a memory of a party and me wanting to have a memory of a party because I wish I was at this fucking party.
Whatever happened to that mask? Like, did you like the one that was in the bag?
That actually ended up lingering around the house for a long time. I think my uncle eventually took it back because he lives in Comac now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he still has it. I don't think it was thrown out, probably because there's probably good memories attached to that mask, as hideous as it is.
It's funny. I feel like they like back then, like they all like all of those like rubber masks were always worse. Like I don't think you see like bloody. Every now and then, I think you come across a few. Like if you go to Party City, I don't think you'll see those. Like they're too violent. But like right by me, there's this place called Ruby's, and I remember I went like last year, and they had a bunch of bloody masks. But you don't see people really buying them that much anymore and walking around.
No, the rubber
with, like,
ones, no.
Yeah. But like you see people wearing rubber masks, but not like ones with like eyeballs missing and the jaw ripped off.
Yeah.
You know? I remember seeing that way more back in the day. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But things change. You know, Halloween over the years is always it's changed, it's evolved. But I know for us, each of us, it's influenced us, and I'm sure it'll keep influencing us for many years to come.
Trick or treat!
While there are some people who may be concerned about the origins of Halloween and its focus on blood, death, horror, and the occult, to millions of youngsters across the nation, it has been adopted as a time to pursue scary fun. It is an opportunity to dress up in ghoulish or fanciful costumes, to engage in the fantasy of being a witch or a vampire, ghost, or devil. Eager trick-or-treaters solicit candy door to door or bob for apples at Halloween parties. Others brave haunted houses and horror movie marathons, while the more daring visit cemeteries at midnight, play with Ouija boards, and hold seances in an effort to contact spirits of the dead.
So there's one more thing I want to add to this whole Halloween nostalgia memory trip that we've been talking about this entire time. It's Devil's Night. For those that don't know, Devil's Night is the night before Halloween. Personally, I've always enjoyed the night before Halloween more than Halloween. There's just a different mood in the air. The atmosphere is different. Everything's just a little different that night, the night before. I've always kind of looked at that as, it's like as lame as I'm going to sound right now. It's got an air of mystery to it. I've always felt it. Every single October 30th, always feel it. But Devil's Night actually isn't a thing everywhere. I've talked to people that have no idea what I'm talking about. And again, Devil's Night is the night before Halloween, and usually people kind of go out and just kind of cause a little mischief, do whatever whatever they're going to do. But I just always just liked the mood it brought. And I remember one time I was talking to somebody, and they, sure enough, actually did know what Devil's Night was. And immediately the guy goes, "Oh, it's a mood for sure." And I'm like, 100%. 100%. And that was a thing over here. And, this may sound a little weird too, but ever since I was a little kid, I was always infatuated with, like, the shitty kids around my area. Like, the kids that were always getting in trouble and always doing dumb shit.
Yeah.
I always, wanted to hang out with them. And for people that, like, for those that do, that do know me, everyone knows that I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke. I'm a pretty straightforward person, but I was always like enchanted by these kids.
You still hung out with the bad kids.
I still am. I mean, I'm still writing music about it.
You weren't a bad kid, but you hung out with the bad kids.
Exactly. And it's just I can't talk about Halloween without talking about Devil's Night. So it would be unfair for me to not bring up Devil's Night. And again, for I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's I think it's just a tri-state area thing, because there's another person that I talked to a little bit on Instagram, and he was saying, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Yeah, Devil's Night for sure." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I don't think anywhere out of New York, New Jersey, Staten Island, I don't think that's even a thing." So it's pretty interesting to kind of to divide that up regionally. Like, you would think that it would be something, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah,
so.
October 30th for me, Devil's Night. Again, it was my mother's birthday, so I always had to go out for her birthday, or cut her a cake, or even as a kid, we always had to do stuff with my grandmother and stuff. So I never really got to celebrate it. I think when I got a little older in high school, I think the only memory I have of Devil's Night itself is I remember Halloween being on a Friday, and Thursday night, my friends and I went out, and we had costumes on. So this was like the early 2000s. I had on a Slipknot jumpsuit. Remember their very first orange jumpsuit? Mm-hmm. I actually was wearing. I know, I was wearing one of those, and I was probably 14. And I remember we went out, and we used to just go hang out in like the park. Some friends. I was, when I was a kid, I was a good kid too. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do anything. But I had friends that liked doing all that stuff. And people had girlfriends and things like that. And we'd hang out in the park. And I remember one of my friends in high school getting egged. Like this group of guys that I didn't know them, but they knew him. They went outside, because this was in an area where like the people used to hang out at 7-Eleven and things like that. They went to go find him specifically, and they egged the shit out of him. I'm not talking like 1 or 2 eggs. Like this dude was
fucking pummeled him.
Like he got hit with probably 3 to 4 cartons of eggs. Like this dude was covered. And the funniest thing about this story is he continued hanging out covered in eggs, and I think he was dressed up as like a wolfman or something. So like he looked horrible. He was all egged up and wearing like fur and stuff like that.
It's dedication, man.
Yeah, dude. And yeah, this guy was a massive pothead. If I don't know if he is anymore. I haven't talked to him in a very long time. But yeah, dude, I just remember like just him being covered. And these guys didn't want to egg me. They didn't want to egg, like I was with maybe like 8 people, but they specifically wanted him. I don't know why. But yeah, Devil's Night and me, like, I did hang out from time to time, but it was never something I always did. Even now, I don't think, like, again, I'm older now, so like the 30th, I have to see my mother, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's usually what it is, plus we're working and we have, jobs and things like that. But it's, it's important, and I think more people need to celebrate it.
Absolutely. Like I said, the two go hand in hand for me, so I can't mention either one, you know what I mean? One can't be mentioned without the other. So, I had to bring that up. And if this will make any sense, if you watch the Are You Afraid of the Dark, I think it's the first episode, the Tale of the Twisted Claw, right? Isn't that the first episode?
I think it is, yeah.
So that Halloween that it's portrayed on, the scene where the kids are being chased by the kids on the bike with the masks.
Yeah.
That always was like the quintessential vibe of Devil's Night for me. Although it takes place on Halloween, to me that's what Devil's Night looked like, if that makes any sense.
A bunch of kids on their bikes and
just terrorizing people. But
that kind of reminds me of the Adventures of Pete and Pete episode. Remember the pumpkin smashers?
The
pumpkin eaters. There you go.
I think it's pumpkin eaters.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They're just going around causing mischief, and they all have like pumpkins on their heads. That's amazing. That episode.
Yeah, I think it's just reckless youth that reminds me of that. So, you should definitely watch The Tale of Twisted Claw.
Yeah, and if there's one thing you take from this episode is celebrate Devil's Night this year.
What about Devil's Night?
What about it? I started the first fires in this goddamn city. Where I knew it, every charlatan shitheel was imitating me. You know what they got now? Devil's Night greeting cards. Isn't that precious?
All right, so that's the first episode of the Haunted Hangover Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you prefer. Dave, where can people find you?
On Instagram at Cody Culp, CODYCVLP.
And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Haunted Hangover. And remember, the best cure for a hangover is...
more booze.
Later, guys.